Ladies and gentlemen, Primetime CP23 here with a podcast. I've had the idea for this particular series, this particular podcast, for a long time. In the past, I had done a couple podcasts with my friend Jake, who we'll talk about a little more later on. But there was never really a theme. It was always just kind of, hey, there was this gaming news today. But I wanted an actual series. And I came up with the idea for this particular type of podcast a few months ago because, especially in competitive gaming, it always intrigues me to see what people's motivation is, why they want to play. So that's why I decided to title this series the Why We Play podcast. I'm very excited about this series. I plan to do weekly podcasts with a different guest every week. This week, it's going to be just me because I wanted to briefly break down, my story and three particular events in my gaming life that really shaped who I am as both a gamer and really even as a person, period. Gaming has always been a huge part of my life. I got my first gaming console when I was like 5 or 6. That was a Nintendo 64. And then a year or two later, I think it was 1997, I got a PlayStation 1 for Christmas. And I just played that thing like crazy. Mostly Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon type stuff. Just good classic games. But there are three games that I feel have really shaped who I am as a gamer. And it all started with Diablo 2, which I will get, more into my reasons behind these later on. But the three games that I really feel shaped me as a gamer are Diablo 2, Fallout 3, and Halo in general. Specifically Halo 3, but the Halos in general. Before we get too ahead of ourselves, I first want to thank you all for watching, and I also want to send out a call to other gamers, to other YouTubers, gaming personalities, competitive players, or really just about anybody else who would like to be on this podcast. I have a list of maybe 5 or 6 people that I would really like to get. But I wanted to make this first episode by myself so that the future episodes can be either completely about the other person or the majority of the story be about the other person. With that said, it's time to get into it. If you would like to be a part of the podcast, shoot me a DM on Twitter or comment on this video, and we will sure see what we can work out for you. So let's get right into it. First of all, I want to talk about Diablo 2. Diablo 2 is a game that I had heard of, but I had never really played until the summer of, I think it was 2003. It was the summer between 7th and 8th grade for me. And the reason why it was such a big deal for me that summer was because my very good friend Luke, who growing up we were basically brothers. We've known each other since like 2nd grade. I mean, we went on family vacations together. Like, This dude's basically just my brother. Well, that summer, he moved into a room in his house with his biological brother, Jake. Not the same Jake that people who watch my streams and stuff know. Totally different Jake. But anyway, Luke and Jake, they got a room together, and they both loved Diablo 2. It was one of their favorite games, but I had never really played it. I had never really played very many PC games at all. So one of the things that we did that summer was, I don't remember how his mom acquired all these computers, but his mom acquired like 5 PCs. Just like old ghetto, like late 90s PCs, like pre-built ones. They were not great, but they were capable of running Diablo 2, and we had it set up so that we could do LAN games. So the 3 of us literally must have played 200 or 300 hours of Diablo 2 over that summer. Just constantly LANing with each other. And like I said, the only time I played the game was when I was over there with them. But just that whole summer, it really taught me about the fun of multiplayer gaming. Before that, I'd play like Madden and stuff, but really other than Madden and like Spyro and, you know, a couple other just random things, I hadn't really spent too much time gaming. Like I would play video games. I had a PlayStation 2 at the time, but nothing really too crazy. And then that summer was the first time I ever really played a lot of a multiplayer game outside of just, you know, playing a game of Madden with Luke. So then, in addition to that, after that summer, I had fallen in love with the game. And so we still played when we could. But one thing that I will always remember about that summer was, because we were playing the same game on all these different computers, because they all had problems. All the monitors sucked. It was horrible. The gaming setups were a joke at that time. That we had, anyway. So one thing that we would have to do is we just scoured the internet looking for game codes, because on Diablo 2, and I know there's a lot of other PC games that are like this, it had a disc, but then you also, but on the box of the game was a little code, like a 16-digit code or something, and you had to enter that code during the installation process, or the game wouldn't install. It just wouldn't work. So because we had like 3 copies of the game, but we were trying to install it over like 7 computers by the time you factored in Luke's mom's laptop, the 4 or 5 PCs that we had down in that basement, and then my computer at home. It was pretty crazy, and we just had to just scour the internet. We looked everywhere we could think of online to find these codes, because we didn't want to go and buy like 6 more copies of the game. That would have been stupid. So I'll always remember that, and I'll always remember my first impression of Fallout 3. Yeah, we are kind of switching gears here, but the first time I ever played Fallout 3, I'd rented it from Blockbuster, which tells you how long ago this was, by the way. I'd rented it from Blockbuster on PlayStation 3. This was probably right after the game came out. Like, we're talking late 2008, maybe early 2009. I got it, and I played it for 5 or 6 hours, maybe. Like, I got out of Vault 101, and then I kind of looked around the area a little bit. I just wasn't into it, which one of my biggest regrets in life, not really, but one of my biggest gaming regrets was that I didn't enjoy Fallout 3. I didn't see the bigger picture of it when I first played it, because it was months and months later before I rented the game again and kind of played it a little more and really started to understand what the game was. And that was probably the greatest game of the previous generation. I firmly believe that. Fallout 3 is my favorite game of all time. The only other game that's in the running with that is Fallout New Vegas and Minecraft. That's it. Other than that, Fallout 3 is just at the top of the heap because of what it meant for both my gaming career, gaming history, whatever you want to call it, and just because of what it did, what it was as a game. It was huge as far as bringing it back for me to single player games, because after Diablo 2, I was really about multiplayer. I played a whole crap ton of Resistance Fall of Man multiplayer. I never really got too much into Call of Duty. At that time, I hadn't anyway. But just, I was much more interested in multiplayer games, or at least games that had multiplayer, so that I could play them with Luke at that time. But when I actually got into Fallout 3 and really started to understand what it was, it just consumed me. It consumed all of my time. I think to this day I probably have well over 1,000 hours played on Fallout 3, and that's all on console, because I didn't have it on PC until whenever the Fallout Anthology came out. August of 2015, September 2015, something like that. And since then, I haven't even played it. Like, I bought the Fallout Anthology. I have not played any of the games from it. But Fallout 3, it really helped me emotionally as well as, in gaming, because there were some times when I was, during that time period, that 2009, 2010, there were some times that I was really, really depressed. Looking back, most of it was stuff that I didn't really need to be depressed about. Most of it was just, general teenage drama, stuff like that. But beyond that, the isolation that I got when I was in this massive open world, and I was all by myself, I was doing literally whatever I wanted to do, and I was, constantly challenged, but in a good way. So Fallout 3 really helped me with, getting through some of that depression, just because it gave me an opportunity to essentially disconnect from the real world for, dozens of hours at a time. And of course, during all that playtime, I amassed a lot of trophies on PS3. Fallout 3 was my first platinum trophy on PlayStation 3. And then on Xbox 360, when I got my Xbox in 2012, late 2012 is when I got my 360. It was also, I believe, my first platinum trophy, or rather my first completed game with the full, I think it's 1550 gamer score on Xbox. I played it for... Each playthrough would take me roughly... I don't know, I'd say roughly 100 hours. And I know I've made at least 7 or 8 playthroughs because I'd gotten the Platinum Trophy on PS3, which at that time I didn't realize that you could make those like clutch save points in between things. Like before you reach level 8, you can save the game and then do it, reach level 8 with good karma, and then go back to the save point, reach level 8 with neutral karma, then go back to the save point, reach it with bad karma. I didn't realize you could do all that at the time, so I had to play it 3 times. I think, if I remember right, I played it through 3 times on PS3, and then in the fall of 2010, my PS3 broke. It yellow lighted, as they say, and it just didn't work after that. So it was several months before I got my next PS3. Well, before my PS3 had crashed, I didn't sync my trophies to the PlayStation Network servers. So I ended up having to do, I think it was 2 playthroughs through again before I could platinum Fallout 3 again. So that was kind of annoying. But I did it because I loved the game and because I love trophies. So after Fallout 3, I played a whole hell of a lot of Fallout New Vegas. Probably not as much, just because the playthroughs didn't take nearly as long on New Vegas. I actually have not platinumed New Vegas on PS3. I've completed the gamer score on Xbox 360, but I have not platinumed it. And then that brings us about to 2012. So in May of 2012, I graduated high school, and 3 days later, I moved from Kansas City to a little town called Mammoth Spring, Arkansas. About 900 people, little bitty town. I mean, it's the middle of nowhere. There's absolutely nothing there. But that's beside the point. The point is, when I went there, I was still kind of a PlayStation fanboy. You know, I wasn't into Xbox. And I found a little local game store there in Mammoth Spring. It was run by this guy named Zach. Now, Zach ended up becoming one of the most important people in my gaming life because he owned a game store. And after I'd been in there a few times, like I would go in, And, like, I'd be bored. I was in the middle of nowhere. I didn't know anyone. And so I would go into his game store, and he was nice. He seemed like a pretty good dude. And so I talked to him, and the third or fourth time that I talked to him, and when I say talk, I mean I would be in there for like an hour just standing around after I had picked what game I wanted to buy. Just standing around talking, just because A, I had nothing better to do, and 2, he was fairly cool. Seemed like a pretty cool dude. Well, about the third or fourth time that I went in there and talked with him, he invited me to a Halo party, a LAN party that they were doing. I came to find out that they did LAN parties about twice a month, once a month at least. Sorry, stuff's going down. I apologize about that interruption. But, so he invited me to a Halo night. Now, I had briefly played Halo 2 back when it was new. A friend of mine named Tyler, he had an Xbox, an original Xbox, and a copy of Halo 2. And I'd go over there and, you know, hang out with him, and, you know, we'd play Halo a little bit. Mostly he would play Halo, and I would kind of watch, because I wasn't any good, and it just wasn't fun for me. I didn't enjoy the game. So when Zach invited me to this Halo night, I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe. But after thinking about it, I'm thinking, well, you know, I don't really have too many friends in this area. You know, why not? I'll just run down there and see what happens. And I went to that Halo night, and it literally changed my life. I met, over the course of Halo nights in the next, like, 3 or 4 months, I ended up meeting 2 of my best friends to this day, and I formed a love for Halo. We would always play Halo 3 on 360. This was before Master Chief Collection. Thank God. I don't think I would have fallen in love if Master Chief Collection had been what we were playing, as broken as that shit is. Or was. It's a little better now. But that's why I ended up buying a Xbox, was because I was going to these Halo nights, and I thought, well, if I'm going to be going to these things, I want to be the best. I don't want to go and just get shit on for 3 or 4 hours while we play Halo. I want to be the best one there. So I eventually bought a 360 like that fall, and I played, I don't even know how many hours. But this was right when Halo 4 came out. I got my Xbox 360 in, I think, October of 2012, and Halo 4 released on November 6th of 2012. And I remember I just played and played and played. It was so fun. See, because for me, Halo 4 was still fun because I didn't know any better. I realized, I knew that it had sprint, and that it had, that you didn't de-scope when you got shot. I knew there were some big differences, but I didn't understand from a Halo perspective all the things that were changing and how big a deal it was to the community that these things were changing. So, to me, I just had fun with it. I had a ton of fun with Halo 4. Myself, Jake, aka C-Todd, who hopefully I'll be able to get on a podcast here shortly. Maybe next week, maybe the week after that. But hopefully soon. Me and Jake and our friend Charity played dozens of hours of matchmaking together just because we all loved the game. They had been playing Halo for a long time. They're both significantly better than me at Halo. Like, it's ridiculous. I don't necessarily consider myself a bad Halo player, but I definitely feel like a bad Halo player when I play with them. Just pointing that out. So that was a lot of fun. Those Halo nights really, those were really the final piece in making me who I am as a gamer today. Because if I had not started going to those Halo nights, I would never have bought a Xbox 360. I would have never bought an Xbox One. And I probably would not even be doing YouTube or streaming because I didn't even know that those things really existed. I mean, I knew YouTube existed, obviously, but I didn't know that there was such a large gaming community on YouTube. How I got into that was because when I was trying to get better at Halo, when I wanted to get better at Halo so bad, I would get on YouTube and I just watched pros play. And through watching pro gameplays and, old tournament footage and stuff like that, I eventually discovered Scott Gandhi, who was a Halo 2 pro. He has done, casting for Halo, for Call of Duty, and, all these other games, Gears of War, Smite, and now he's actually a developer with Hi-Rez Studios, which is the company that makes Smite. BRB. It's good water. Nestle Pure Life, I'm ready for my sponsorship. Just hit me up, guys. But anyway, towards the end of Halo 4, Gandhi started teaming. He decided that at the end of Halo 4, he wanted to team for Master Chief Collection. He wanted to play competitively again. And he found this guy that I had never heard of. And they started playing together in gameplays and stuff on Gandhi's stream and his YouTube. And this guy, his name was Legion. And Legion has ended up becoming one of my biggest, I don't want to say role model, that's not really the right word, but I guess inspiration would be a good word for it, as far as YouTube and, streaming and all that stuff goes, because kind of similar to me, he's just a random guy from Kansas City. Now, unlike me, he's very good at Halo and Call of Duty and other games. And I'm not good at those things. But, Legion is probably my favorite YouTuber, and he has kind of, like I said, inspired me to, just kind of follow the dream. If he can do it, I can do it. Which may or may not be actually true. Time will tell. But I didn't actually intend to start talking about Legion in this episode, but whatever, it's a podcast. That's what happens. You start to ramble. But yeah, one day I would like to get Gandhi and or Legion on the podcast. I don't know if either of those things will ever happen. As of the time of recording this, I have 6 subscribers. Legion has something like 500,000. So it wouldn't make any sense for him to collaborate with me at this time. But maybe someday. Who knows? But anyway, I think that kind of explains, you know, who I am and where I come from in gaming. The slideshow you've been watching is just a whole bunch of games that really mean a lot to me. Games that I've spent, you know, hundreds of hours playing. Some of my favorite games. And in the future, where that slideshow is, there will be a webcam for the other people involved in this podcast. But like I said, this first podcast is just me. But the future of the series, like I said, I want to make it a weekly series. I want a different person on here every week. At some point, I might get with Jake and essentially make him a co-host. Just so, you know, there's more than just me talking a lot of the time. But we'll see how it plays out. I mean, I am a gamer at heart. I truly believe that. Gaming is pretty much everything to me. Outside of my girlfriend, gaming is probably the most important thing in my life. So I am really excited about this video. I'm really excited about the future of this series. And I'm really excited about this ending tagline that we'll get to in just a second. But as I said at the beginning of the video, if you would like to be a part of the podcast, just get in contact with me somehow. I've linked my Twitch page and my Twitter handle, whatever it's called, down below. If you would like to be a part of this podcast, I encourage you to just reach out to me somehow. Even if you're not positive if you want to be a part of it, I would say go ahead and just hit me up. We'll see what we can work out. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Primetime CP23 with the first episode of the new podcast. And we will see you next week. I believe the guest for next week is going to be C-Todd, but I'm not positive yet. I still got to text him and tell him, hey, you got to do this with me. By the way, yes, there is a box spring for a bed behind me because it's broken, and I have to see if I can fix it. But ladies and gentlemen, this is Primetime CP23, and this is why we play.